Let's see if this thing is working. Looks like it probably is. Anyways, I have got no clue if anybody's even going to be on here today. I have no real topic. I'm just kind of hanging out. My wife is currently working on all the stuff for, what do you call it, for Thanksgiving. And I am sitting here in the studio just working on some video footage for the next YouTube video. And figured I may as well just go ahead and fire off a live stream and see if anybody shows up so we can hang out and chat for a bit. With that said, I guess I will get back to good morning, Z Techno. I'm glad that we have at least one. I really wasn't expecting much of anybody, especially just given what day it is, at least here in the United States. Where are you hailing from, Z Techno? At least I assume the audio is working. Check, 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 check. Well, I'll get back to editing this video that I'm working on, and we'll try to keep my eye over. Okay. Oh, Russia. Excellent. This would probably not be a good time for me to show off my lack of Russian skills. But я немного говорю по-русски, or something to that effect. So I've got a video that I'm working on for, I guess I'm probably going to schedule it for release on Monday, and I was just doing an experiment to create a Pro Tools style floating mixer in Reaper. And I do my editing in DaVinci Resolve, which is why you see that on screen instead of Reaper. And I suppose for anybody that wants to hang for a bit, you get a bit of a sneak preview as I edit this mess. If you got any comments, questions, or what have you, feel free to drop that into the chat window there. And let's just see where our travels take us today. Hey, it's Mike. Let's talk about Reaper. I've been a Reaper user pretty much since I started working with audio. Happy Turkey Day to you. While I've never used Pro Tools, I've seen plenty of people using it on YouTube. One of the features that I've seen in Pro Tools that was always interesting to me is when a user is working in the Arrange view, or whatever it's called in Pro Tools, where you have the track control panel, a listing of... Oh, you know what? This was my favorite part right here. Because that never happens in Pro Tools, right? Hey, it's Mike. Let's talk about Reaper. I've been a Reaper user pretty much since I started working with audio. While I've never used Pro Tools, I've seen plenty of people using it on YouTube. One of the features that I've seen in Pro Tools that was always interesting to me is when a user is working in the Arrange view, or whatever it's called in Pro Tools, where you have the track control panel, a listing of your tracks, and no visible mixer, the user would click on one of the tracks and something like a floating fader that's dedicated to that one track would pop up. Today I'd like to try to recreate that in Reaper. Let's take a look. Lovely. I've got a project open with 10 blank... Well, needless to say, I managed to get the day off today, but that stinks that you're working. I guess it's great that you have a job, so don't get me wrong, but it stinks that you're having to work on Thanksgiving. Hopefully not a full shift. But while I've got you, if there's any way you can make sure that those people deliver those cables that were supposed to be delivered yesterday, I'd appreciate that greatly. Gotta drop in my crappy logo. Get that sized up nicely. I think I normally take that down to about 0.2. Get that moved into place. You know, I probably should have put something on Discord just to see if anybody wants to hang out. Why don't I do that real quick? There we go. We have invited the crowd from Discord, and we'll see what happens. Good morning. Hey, I know you, Chris, by another name. Thanks for joining. For those who have just joined, I have no real topic today. I'm just kind of doing some editing for my next video and goofing off a little bit. Let's get a drop shadow added on that guy and fine tune it. I always end up having to take that blur down all the way just long enough to figure out exactly where to place it. It's one of those things I kind of struggle with is with the why am I leaning like that? I guess I could just sit upright and fix my microphone. That would I bet my back would agree with that a lot better. But yeah, getting that drop shadow just perfect is probably never going to happen. Wow, and YouTube Studio's complaining that I'm pushing a higher than recommended bitrate. But it's also saying that the stream quality is excellent, so I guess I just won't worry too much about that. We're on gigabit internet here, so I guess it's not too big of a deal. Not that I get the full gigabit back here in the dungeon, but it works. That should be sufficient there. That looks like it's placed quite well. So now I'll just need to drag this layer out to the end of the video, with the exception of the parts. I don't like to have that sitting on there when I'm on full screen parts. I don't think I did too much of that until we got to the end. But I'll find those spots. Try this again and see what we got. Hey, it's Mike. Let's talk about Reaper. I've been a Reaper user pretty much since I started working with audio. While I've never used Pro Tools, I've seen plenty of people using it on YouTube. One of the features that I've seen in Pro Tools that was always interesting to me is when a user is working in the Arrange view, or whatever it's called in Pro Tools, where you have the track control panel, a listing of your tracks, and no visible mixer, the user would click on one of the tracks and something like a floating fader that's dedicated to that one track would pop up. Today I'd like to try to recreate that in Reaper. Let's take a look. I've got a project open with 10 blank tracks and the mixer docked at the bottom in what I believe may be the default Reaper layout for the mixer. The mixer can be either docked as it is now or floating, and you can also toggle the mixer visibility. In the Pro Tools example I explained in the introduction, the mixer is floating, but it's also isolated to a single track. That would suggest that we need to undock our mixer and somehow narrow it down to where it only shows the desired track. Before we start to destroy the beautiful setup that we currently have, it's probably a good idea to save a copy of this layout that we can always recall. We'll go to View, and Screen Sets, Layouts. The default key press for this is Control-E. Now I've already saved this. You know, I struggle with making a decision as to whether I want to put text overlays on this stuff. I mean, it clearly shows it in the menu there, and while I don't pause nearly as long as Kenny, I do tend to pause on these steps just a bit, and you can see the keyboard shortcuts listed there in the menu. Any thoughts on that topic? That would suggest that we need to undock our mixer and somehow narrow it down to where it only shows the desired track. Before we start to destroy the beautiful setup that we currently have, it's probably a good idea to save a copy of this layout that we can always recall. We'll go to View, and Screen Sets, Layouts. The default key press for this is Control-E. Now I've already saved this, but just for the sake of showing you how this is done, go to the Windows tab, select whichever number you'd like, and save. You can give this whatever name you'd like, and be sure to place a check mark on each item that you'd like saved. In this case, my primary concern is the layouts. And with that saved, I can now alter the layout of my mixer and easily be able to recall that default setting. For example, if I were to right-click my mixer and undock it, I can now press F7 to load my default layout, and we're right back where we started. With that, you know, for this particular video, I was testing some new equipment. If I can find it, it's here on my desk somewhere. Let's see here. Excuse me. All right, yeah, so for that video that I'm working on in the editor currently, instead of using my normal Rode Pod mic, I was test driving this, which hopefully that will focus. There we go. And this is a wireless lapel set. And it came with 2 transmitters and 1 receiver, and like a bunch of extra cables and stuff. So like I've got the receiver here and these 2 transmitters. If I can get it out of the package. Goodness. Turn it on. There we go. So this transmitter, you can just set that thing up and clip it onto your shirt. It has a mic built into it, but you can also run a wired mic. So I had been kind of testing that, and I like the flexibility that it gives me because I don't have to stay glued to this mic, and when I turn my head and things like that, I still get the same sound quality. But it's going to take a whole lot of trial and error to get the placement just right on it. I find that I don't know, it seems like it was really difficult to get just the right settings for the mic gain adjustment on the transmitter itself, and then also on my camera, because the receiver would clip onto one of the mounts on my camera, and of course just run the wire to that. Oh, let's see here. Okay, just usually watch exactly where you're going. Yeah, Chris, the other Chris, and I'll just refer to you as Denson Studios to avoid confusion. But I was thinking about streaming today. I'm resurrecting my old deal, the Dad Rock project. Now, the guy that I normally did that with has moved away, so I'm looking at working with some other people. Since I've made so many friends over the internet, I guess collaborations are a lot easier, and there's a huge talent pool out there. So I'm actually looking to do a cover of American Psycho by the Misfits, and was thinking about tracking the drums for that today. I've already done the scratch guitar for it, but I don't want to be the guitarist on this project. I just want to do the drums. Gear rundown. That would be kind of cool. You think that the good morning, Simon? What the heck time is it over there? Thank you guys for joining. Yeah, as far as a gear rundown, do you think that would be something more fun to do as a live stream? Well, I would probably need to do it as a prepared video because I don't have a wireless transmitter for my camera. I guess I could always buy one, but of course that costs money. And, well, money. And I've got plenty of different lenses and stuff that I can use for my camera, but with it just being me, it's hard to follow myself around with the camera to show my gear, but I can always move around and film stuff, edit it later, and get it fixed. It is in the afternoon for you over there. It is currently 9:35 here, so you are viewing from the future. Good morning, Ryan. You get to catch me live, but I'm not doing anything today but goofing off and editing a video, so if anything, you might get a sneak preview at Monday's release, and maybe we'll get around to doing some tracking on the same stream. Let's see if we can make it through this video proofing here. What was I doing? It's Banera. I can't read that. I've got a project open with 10 blank tracks and the mixer docked at the bottom in what I believe may be the default Reaper layout for the mixer. The mixer can be either docked as it is now or floating, and you can also toggle the mixer visibility. In the Pro Tools example I explained in the introduction, the mixer is floating, but it's also isolated to a single track. So yeah, for those of you who are just joining, I'm editing some footage that I filmed yesterday. I've never used Pro Tools, but something that I spotted, like whenever people are using it online, like on YouTube, I thought it was interesting how when they have let me get this going up full screen, when they've got the arrange view or whatever it's called, where they have no mixer at the bottom, as like they have a floating single fader that comes up so they can adjust volume. Excuse me. Now, I have since learned that apparently that fader that comes up is not actually functional, that it just represents what they're doing when they adjust the volume on the track. But I was trying to recreate that in this video using cycle actions and screen sets. So in some respects, you might consider it a bit of a failed experiment, but it also has sparked my interest to make me want to work more with cycle actions and screen sets to create custom layouts. It's not totally a failed experiment, I guess, but it didn't work exactly the way as I expected. I think I may be able to get it there eventually, but anyway, let's go back and see what we got. The mixer can be either docked as it is now or floating, and you can also toggle the mixer visibility. In the Pro Tools example I explained in the introduction, the mixer is floating, but it's also isolated to a single track. That would suggest that we need to undock our mixer and somehow narrow it down to where it only shows the desired track. Before we start to destroy the beautiful setup that we currently have, it's probably a good idea to save a copy of this layout that we can always recall. We'll go to View, and Screen Sets Layouts. The default key press for this is Control-E. Now I've already saved this, but just for the sake of showing you how this is done, go to the Windows tab, select whichever number you'd like, and save. You can give this whatever name you'd like, and be sure to place a check mark on each item that you'd like saved. In this case, my primary concern is the...
Okay, just making sure I didn't accidentally stop my stream. Sometimes I'll accidentally have OBS selected, and I'll press space to stop the transport in whatever I'm working on, and end up butchering it. So I'm working in, Pat, let's see, sticking a mixer on my second monitor. You know, I do play with having my mixer on the second monitor, but I guess it just depends on what I'm doing. I have a hard time focusing as it is sometimes, and I think more often than not, I just end up having no mixer or an undocked mixer or I don't know. I guess it just depends on the weather or what day it is. I think I can let this finish up and then maybe make the thumbnail or cover photo for this. You know, now you got me thinking, what do I have my mixer set at? Let's find out. Yeah, I think that for a while I ran it on a second screen as well, but I have a tendency to just toggle it on and off quite a bit. This was a project I did a couple of weeks ago for a, it was actually my first, well, not necessarily my first. I probably dabbled in this many years ago, but this was my first rap project. I had a guy reach out to me to track some rap vocals for him, and he purchased a beat online, which he was able to get the stems for that, so I brought those in and remixed it. Didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot with that, just did some automation to take some parts out in different sections. But more often than not, I just kind of work in this view. On occasion, I'll undock the mixer, like I've got this screen set to just have a floating one. And then the one that I made yesterday for that Pro Tools style video was this guy, which just gives me a floating mixer. I created a custom action for this to, like if I hold Alt and double click a track, the mixer should appear right there where the cursor is. But the problem that I have with it is that if I subsequently call that same action, it doesn't follow. So I hope to get that figured out a bit later. Let's see, we got a question here. How am I getting audio from Reaper to OBS from Dr. Matt Zappa? That is here in Monitor Effects. I've got Restream, and I've got that set to send audio to local broadcast. I can try to bring OBS over here. Maybe I can just take a screenshot of it so it doesn't create that duplicate effect. Give me just a second here. Filters. Now, there we go. Grab a couple of screenshots. All right, so Dr. Matt Zappa, are you using Mac or Windows? Because that will make a bit of a difference. I use the, what do you call it, RIA plugs? The I can't talk today, sorry. The dedicated install of RIA plugs or standalone, so you can see like in my, what is the word here? In my filters for the audio device, I've added the Restream plugin, and I've got that set to capture from the same source that I'm sending out of Reaper, which is local broadcast. The kicker on it, though, is that in order for it to work properly, and let me grab another screenshot here. The thing with using Restream is I find that it's best to add it to a dummy input. Otherwise, I think what John with Reaper Blog, what he did was he may add it to a mic input, but also add several gain plugins to completely reduce all the gain input from that microphone before it hits restream. What I ended up doing is just using a dummy input. Like I've got no machine on my computer that I use so I can remote into it when I'm tracking my drums. Since it's just me, I can control my computer from a laptop back there at the drums. So I'll just use like either the no machine mic input, which I don't route any audio through, or I'll use like this input 15 and 16 from my audio device. And since there's no audio passing through that, then I can just add the restream filter and capture from Reaper. Another option in Windows that I've used in the past is if you when you install Reaper, there's options to also install reroute, I believe it's called. So if I go to my master track, let me get my mixer back up here in regular mode. Under my outputs, I can send to a hardware output, and you'll see I've got virtual outputs, reroute 1 and 2 for stereo pairs, 3 and 4, and so on. You can install an ASIO or ASIO, however, I guess it's ASIO because the first letter stands for audio, but you can add an ASIO input plugin to OBS, and you can route that way. The issue that I've had with that is I have to rebuild it every time, whereas with reroute, I leave it permanently up here in my monitor effects, and you'll notice I have it before this Tone Boosters Morphit. I use that if I'm listening to something in my headphones to help to correct the curve and hopefully give me a bit more of a flat response in my earphones, but I want to make sure that part doesn't get streamed out, so I've got restream before that. I hope that answers the question. I know I kind of rushed through it there, and maybe I could do a video on that sometime. Let me see what else I may have missed here. All the tracks of the same color on the same bus. As far as the track colorings, Ryan, I use SWS extension auto color. And give me just a moment. Let me grab a link I'll post up for you. I did a video on how I set that up, and it may be beneficial to check that out. Well, if I can read, let's see here, auto color. And the internet is acting silly. There we go. I want to make sure I don't accidentally play this. All right, so Ryan. All right, so Ryan, there is a link to a video about that. Hopefully that works. But just to kind of explain it a bit, excuse me, I've got some rules that are set up here in auto color. Let me check OBS and make sure that I am okay. Just wanted to make sure that I didn't dip down to where my camera frame is. But I've got some rules that are set here, like I have a custom color for a marker. Like you can see my start marker and my end marker in this project are both blue. I've defined that color here, and I have a rule that says any marker that is named equal start or equal end would have that color. This next rule makes sure that any track that's a child track takes on the color of the parent. So if I create a folder, like here, I've got this backing track that's a folder, and all of the tracks contained inside of that have the same color because of this rule. I've got a rule to make sure that my drum tracks, or any track that has the word drum in it, and these are not case sensitive, but any track that has the word drum in it will take on that color. Same thing for guitar or GTR, which I probably need to pick a different color because that red is really annoying. Bass tracks are that color of blue. Vocal tracks will take on that violet color. Effects tracks are gold. And now here's an interesting one here. If you take a look at track number 20, you can see that it's purple, but it contains the word both FX and Vox. I've got a rule for Vox to make any track with the word Vox in it, this purple color, but any track with the word FX to be yellow. Now, there is a hierarchy, or I guess a rule order in this. So since FX is lower on the food chain, that rule doesn't take precedence. Now I can drag and drop this and move it up above Vox, and you can see that track number 20 has now turned yellow instead. But I generally like for my, actually I think I may want to keep that. That way I can at a glance know which tracks are effects tracks. So I'll move that up in priority. Someone on one of the Facebook groups yesterday was asking about how to make tracks automatically be a random color. Let me open up a new project tab and I'll actually recreate that real quick. So right now I've got my tracks set to, like, if I insert 10 multiple tracks, 10 blank, I don't know, 10 tracks there. They're all gray. Now I can add a new rule in here and say a track, and I can, underneath the filter, if I right click that, I've got options I can choose. So I'll just choose any and make the color random. Now this is at the bottom of the chart, so now you can see it's already made all of my tracks random colors, but if I go in here and name track number 5, drum, it switches to the drum color. If I change this GTR, it switches to the guitar color. If I make this one bass, it switches to the bass color, and so on. And that's all determined by the order of your auto color setup. You do have to have SWS extensions installed for this, but that's all covered in the video that I linked in the chat there. This is really helpful to me just for organization. So like if I want to, let's just say I'm going to track for my drums, which I've got a template saved for that, but I'll just make 11 tracks, call them track, whatever, there's my tracks. I've got a command to put things in folders. So if I take these and call this drums, now those are all inside of a drums folder, and they've automatically taken on the colors based on the rules of the auto color. And you can also add icons. You can change layouts based on your rules. Like if I wanted, let's just mess with this a little bit more, I'll add another rule. Over here under the rule type, you can have either track, marker, or region. For the filter, you've got options here. Like let's say that if a track is a folder, I can change the layout. Now I think I'm using the default theme here, so I don't have a lot of layout options. Let's see, mixer. Let me switch to another theme. That will make this a bit more interesting. Let's go with Echolot. I chose this one because it's got a lot more layouts. So my mixer layout options, let's say, let me find one that might work. Let's just do MCP2 just for kicks. So any folder track, I can change the mix control panel layout to MCP space 2. Now the thing with this one is you have to make sure that you have named them exactly as it shows up in your listing, which is why I chose a simpler one. But you can see as soon as I put that rule in here, this folder track has already changed its layout. If we want to try a different one, let's see, Mixer. Let's separator. I think I can spell that, so I'll change this to separator. And as soon as I hit enter, that particular track, which is a folder, has changed to the separator layout. That can be really helpful just for your own organization, to get things colored the way you want, to make sure that folder tracks appear a certain way. And you can hide stuff. Yeah, there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with this. The icons I don't mess with a whole heck of a lot, but you can load in icons for certain tracks. Let's get the old Acme Turd Polish icon there. And let's get this, I'm going to remove this rule here to take out the separator. So that particular track should now have this turd polish icon, and if I get rid of my mixer and blow this track up where we can see it, that icon is most definitely there. So if you wanted to make sure that all of your excuse me. So if you wanted to make sure that all of your guitar tracks, for example, had guitar icons, I can go in there and pick any of these stock icons, or if you've created your own, you can add those in there as well. I don't know that I would ever actually use the icons though. So let me get rid of that, and now we're back to normal. Except that I'm still on this theme. I wanted to like this theme, but this huge transport, I think they may have fixed that in a more recent release. You know, one of the themes that I like the most is one from White Tie, where he just modified the default Reaper 6 theme ever so slightly, but didn't quite finish it. But as of late, I've just been sticking with the standard theme just because it's one that just about everybody has access to. Give me just a moment to catch up in chat. Let's see. I honestly didn't really expect to have anybody show up. I just figured I'd turn on the camera and see what happens. Second monitor. Greetings from Spain. That is a long way from home, at least for me. I think I may be caught up in chat. Okay, let's see. Superior drummer. Have the tracks routed out. Can hide the MIDI track from the mixer. Now, Chris, are you talking about? Is that something that you're able to do from the auto layout option in SWS extensions? Simon, you see themes. Gosh, I can't talk again. You're asking which theme that is. I'm not sure how long ago you typed that, so just to cover all the themes that I've looked at. Right now, this is the default Reaper 6 theme. The other two that I had up and running was Echolot, which, let's see, that's version 1.9. Let me pull up the forum and see if they have updated since then. Part of me likes this theme, but another part of me was just really annoyed with how big the mixer and transport is. And I like to. I'm only on a 1080p screen. My eyes, I don't think, are quite good enough to truly appreciate a 4K. Just double checking to see which version Echolot is up to now. So 1.9 is apparently the most recent one. Just for the sake of argument, let's check and see if they have a more narrow transport layout for this. Okay, they do have a transport narrow. I like that. And once again, like with these, at the default view, the master track is huge, and I've got 19 faders listed here. Now, if I switch back to my default theme, I've got 23 tracks. So it's a nice theme, but it really takes up a lot of real estate, in my opinion. Let's see here. Oh, the other theme that I had, let's see, that was Echolot, the default one. And this one that's default 6, white tie mod parts, this is one that I really like. It's not too drastically different from stock, but little touches, like I like the way that these knobs look versus the stock layout. And it just seems like it pops a little bit more and seems to be ever so slightly more condensed. Kamala, I used to use Kamala a lot. I really wish that would be updated. I don't know if I still even have that installed. Let's take a look. I play with themes ever so often. Yeah, I do. There is default Kamala. I don't know if that's the right one. Yeah, I like the look of this, and you can see the faders are much more narrow, and I've got 27 tracks here as opposed to the 23 on the default Reaper one. And I'm actually quite a fan of the old Reaper 5. I've got one extra track here. Get rid of my dock. And I really like the way that the indentations, or indent, or whatever the right English is for that, I like the way that the indent goes on that. I don't know how I feel about the arrange view and the way that that looks. That's a little hard for me to see, but you can always edit that and change it to a darker background. And I tried this default analog. I didn't really care too much for it either. It seems like it's loosely based off of Kamala, just looking at the way that these faders are. But there's no indentation down here in the mixer. And I like a little bit of an indent there. Like you can see here, I've got it slightly indented, but not pushed up quite as far as it was in Reaper 5. Let's see, have I missed any more questions here? How would you mic mashed potatoes? Very carefully. Mic them with gravy. That's what's up. But yeah, if you guys have any more Reaper questions, feel free to throw them out there. I am nowhere near the best, but I will try my best to answer them. Now I can't seem to find the top of my mixer. Oh, there it is. You know, the touchscreen. Let me remind you of Windows 8, back when Microsoft thought that it would be a good idea to switch things to touchscreen. It sounds good until you actually try it. Denson, if you did want to test, you can download applications to put on like an iPad or an Android tablet. I think like Touch OSC, to where you can actuate your faders and everything. But no, for me, it was just really awkward because of not having any real tactile response. You're just rubbing your finger across smooth glass, so you can't feel a fader under your fingertips. I would say if anything, you might consider a regular control surface like maybe the Behringer X Touch. But at the end of the day, just after trying so many of these things, it seems like the keyboard and mouse is about as easy as it gets. Plus, my desk is messy, and I would have to find somewhere to put that stuff. Sylvia Massey, she is much smarter than I am. Do any of you guys use a touchscreen interface? I know that Slate is really big about that Raven desk, which is a bit expensive, and I don't know, it just seems kind of awkward to me. I think that Adam from Hot Pole Studios may have a touchscreen, but I don't recall if I've seen him use it. I know that he's got a huge screen that's sitting down in his desk, and it may just be a screen. Who knows? But yeah, not that's kind of a deal breaker for me, is just not being able to feel those faders. I thought about getting the X Touch, but I know so many people who have bought control surfaces that thought that it was a good idea at first, but after using it for a bit, they just reverted back to using the mouse because it was quicker. And that what Chris said, the fingerprints would drive me batty. I've got a touchscreen laptop and I don't touch it because the fingerprints, I can't deal with it. But I mean, this is the best control surface in the world. Well, not this one in particular. I actually need to get a better one, but just a mouse. So on my desk, I've got just my keyboard that needs to be replaced because most of the keys have been rubbed off. My regular optical mouse, and then I've got this. What is this thing called? Let me let it focus there. Trackball. I use that sometimes for precision because it's got a little button on the side to quickly toggle between a precision mode that slows down the movement of the pointer. And I can't remember what I got that for initially. I think maybe for my video editing. But with that in mind, excuse me a second. Oh, so much noise. Let's see here. Back to OBS. For my video editing, I've also got this. This is the speed editor keyboard from, oh, it's got dog hair on it. Hold on. There we go. The dog hairless DaVinci Resolve or Blackmagic speed editor. I don't use it a whole heck of a lot for my regular editing, but if I'm ever doing multicam work, like if I shot a music video, that comes in real handy for being able to quickly work with multiple synced cams. I can, once I get my footage synced, I can press a key on that to tell it which of the angles that I want to use and just paint it out onto the screen, or onto the timeline rather. Let's see here. I guess I should probably close this. I've got this set to make automatic backups, and there's no telling how many automatic backups this thing has made since I've had it open. So let's find out, because now I'm curious. What is this guy's name? Yep, I have made a handful of them today. Not too many. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, Pat, the keyboard shortcuts. You know what? You bring up an interesting point about the keyboard shortcuts. This is something that some of you may find interesting if I can remember where it is. Yeah, if you've created a lot of custom keyboard shortcuts, if you open your actions list under key map in the lower right corner, there is an option to export a shortcut key map, and that you can put that somewhere like Google Drive or OneDrive or wherever you back your stuff up to where if you ever have a system crash, or if you ever just want to tinker with something, you can import that same key map. And I have a tendency to take copies of this maybe once a quarter or so because things may change, and it's nice to be able to revert back to any point in time if I'd like to. There's also an option here to restore all the shortcut bindings to factory defaults, and that can come in handy if you've totally destroyed things, which I've done a few times. Knobs on the keyboard to adjust the volume. I don't have any knobs on my keyboard. I'm considering getting a mechanical keyboard. I just not sure that I want to spend the money for something that's still just going to type. DS1 mixer. CSI, I have not used that yet. Of course, I don't have a control surface, so I guess that's probably why I haven't used it. But I've been watching the development of that for a while and just haven't. I keep talking about wanting to get a control surface, but I keep talking myself out of it because the keyboard and mouse is still working. I think that about the only issue I've got with my keyboard at the moment is certain keys are now completely invisible. Forgive me for fiddling. My shoes don't feel tight enough, so I'm just kind of. And there goes the dog. Yeah, some of the defaults. I don't know. They're just kind of odd, or at least they are to me. But since I don't have any muscle memory from any other DAW, I mean, it was really easy for me to adapt to Reaper. I'm gonna pull my. There we go. Get my other scene up and running here and hop back into Resolve here and see if we can't finish up this editing. I'll keep my eye over there on the chat window since people are talking, which is really cool. Let's see where we left off.
In the Pro Tools example I explained in the introduction, the mixer is floating, but it's also isolated to a single track. That would suggest that we need to undock our mixer and somehow narrow it down to where it only shows the desired track. Before we start to destroy the beautiful setup that we currently have, it's probably a good idea to save a copy of this.
I didn't say that right. From IDDQD Sound. They both do their video editing in Reaper, and I have tried that, but I really like Resolve just for some of the additional features. I've gotten into motion graphics and compositing, and this just gives me a whole lot more, even with the color grading. Like I pull the footage off my camera, for example. Let me get my clips showing here. And this is probably a really subtle difference, but this is my before. So that's what the picture looked like straight off of the camera. I always find the dumbest freeze frame. Let me find look at that. And I just did a very mild color grading because I like to reduce the contrast and knock off that edge a bit so it looks less like a home video. So it's quite powerful with all the different effects and things that we can do in here. Which, if we get around to it, you'll probably be slightly blown away by how I make my cover photos for YouTube. It's a bit unorthodox.
Take a look. I've got a project open with 10 blank tracks and the mixer docked at the bottom in what I believe may be the default Reaper layout for the mixer. The mixer can be either docked as it is now or floating, and you can also toggle the mixer visibility. In the Pro Tools example I explained in the introduction, the mixer is floating, but it's also isolated to a single track. That would suggest that we need to undock our mixer and somehow narrow it down to where it only shows the desired track.
Matter of fact, let's put the cart before the horse and go ahead and start working on a cover photo. So I'm going to make myself a new timeline. Oddly enough, I actually make my covers in Resolve. I mean, it's not a graphic design program, but I end up using it for that. And what I'll typically do first is grab my OBS capture and just find something. That would probably be a good one there, somewhere around there. Select an in and out point, which is going to be way too long, but I'll still just grab a bit and drag it down here into the timeline. And then find something that has what I might want to represent like that and do a freeze frame on it. And change that duration to 5 seconds. And then I will, noise gate on the dog. Do I have a noise gate turned? You know what? I probably do. Let me check that. I've totally forgot to check this stuff. Yeah, I've got a gate on my interface, which I guess you guys can probably see this mess now. My interface is a Roland Studio Capture. And I'll just bring that down a bit more. I had this same mic suspended up in the air the other day because I was working with the wireless lapel. Oh, you're talking... Oh, the dog. Whoops. In that case, never mind. So once I've got my background layer chosen, I'll go into my camera and just find somewhere where I don't look stupid, which is very difficult. I'll just grab an in and out point somewhere, drag that down, and then kind of go through it with in a bit more detail to try to find what frame I'd like to use. Preferably one that's not going to be too difficult for me to cut out, because I do some creative masking. The coffee cup scenes are always nice. Just want to make sure that that's pretty clear. And I'll go frame by frame and just find the most clear picture that I can, which that looks good there. Thanks for joining in there, Simon. We'll catch you later. And then I'll freeze frame that part, delete the beginning, and chop that down to 5 seconds as well, just so my top and bottom layers are the same length. And here's where it gets kind of stupid. I'll grab both of these and create a fusion compound or a fusion clip from it. What fusion is in Resolve is that's what you use for Couch Camper. Where are you located again? But fusion is for compositing. You can do motion graphics and different kinds of overlays and whatnot. I'm going to rename that for a moment, and then we'll open that up in Fusion. And this is where it gets interesting, because most of your video editors are layer-based. I've never used Premiere, but I mean everything that's in it, to my understanding, is all based on layers. In Fusion, we work with nodes instead of layers. You can still create layers, but Germany, it is, hopefully it's much warmer there than it is here. But we can create layers in this, but it's still node-based, so essentially we're making a flowchart. The first thing that I need to do is figure out which of these is which, so I'll open up this media in1 in my first viewer, and that's OBS, so I'll rename that. And I know that this is me, so I'll just rename that mic. And then I want to actually disconnect all of that from the media out and start over. I like to drop a background layer in first. The reason that I do that is because I want to make sure that my timeline is actually 1080p in case I had any 4K footage. So and that's 1080p, so I'll go ahead and create that background to my media out, which gives me a resulting black screen. I want OBS on the bottom, and the placement of this doesn't matter. All I'm going to do is merge this OBS node to the background, which will create that merge node. And I can move this anywhere. It just follows the flowchart. Now here's where it gets to be fun, is I need to merge myself in this, even if it's just temporary, and add a polygon node. The polygon node is for masking. So I'll place a copy of myself over my first viewer. The second viewer here is actually showing what's in the media out. So with my polygon node selected, I've now got my polygon tools, but I don't have it connected yet. I just want this as a point of reference so I can start to draw around myself. Which, looking at that hard edge right there, this may not be the best thing to use. Let's start back over here for a second. Open that up in the timeline. And I want to replace this. The reason I decided against that is because if I get rid of this and look at my bottom layer, the way that my elbow sat there would not allow me to do a good clean cut. So I need to get something where my elbow is not quite in the way. That may be a better shot there. Let's go back a few frames. Let's use an in point there and a different out point. We'll drag it down again. It's kind of tedious, but this will all start to make sense in a minute. We'll just go with that shot right there. That's fine. Mike likes coffee. Didn't mean to delete everything. Make that 5 seconds. And go back into Fusion. And that's been replaced with the frame that I put up there. Oh, the nodes, it took me a long time to grasp it, but watching Casey Ferris videos has helped me greatly. So now that I've got the frame that I want in here, this is where it gets fun. So I've got my polygon tool selected, and on my left side viewer, I'm going to zoom in on myself and just start to draw around myself fairly carefully. I don't really. I probably spend more time on this than I should. I'm not that good with these kinds of tools, like where you can click and drag to adjust the curve. Uh, Bezier, or however the word's pronounced, I think it's called. But I'll draw fairly closely around myself, and once I'm done drawing around myself, we'll connect up this mask node to the node that's got me in it, and you'll see the end result in this viewer, which is showing the media out. And if I don't get these perfect, it's fine, because I can always edit them after the fact. I can also add a soft edge to it to help mask the imperfections. Plus, I also like to use this cutout of myself to create a bit of a glow behind it. Like I can see that node right there, or point, is a bit off. I'd considered maybe doing some Resolve tutorials, but there's people out there that are way better. Of course, I said the same thing about Reaper. There's definitely much better people to watch, much more knowledgeable, but I enjoy doing it, so just really glad that some other people decided to come along for the journey. Alright, so I've got my mask done, and now I can connect, let me zoom in on this just a bit. I can connect this polygon node to the mask input on myself, and poof, now I am clipped out, and you can see we've got some harsh edges there. So with the polygon node reselected, oh gosh, I hate when I do that. Let me back out a bit. So with the now that I can see it over there as well, with this polygon node selected, I can move some of these points. I do think that I want to go ahead and add a soft edge to it, so I can click the polygon node and go to the inspector and just increase this soft edge parameter a bit. That should help to ease some of those edges. I don't want to go too soft, but just find enough to get rid of those edges there. Yeah, it seems people have a love-hate relationship with Kenny. They really love the knowledge, but I don't know. I think I learn a lot from him, so I've got nothing but good things to say about him, but I can understand why some people have difficulty with the delivery method. That seems to be really the biggest draw for people that appreciate my channel, is just the bit more laid-back approach and goofy delivery. I mean, because of as far as the things that are shown on the channel, I'm pretty sure that everything that I do has been done before. It's just I do it slightly different. All right, let's get these to fit the screens. Oh, the subtitle. I'm going to have to go back and watch some of my subtitles, the auto-generated ones, just to see what it does. So now we've got myself cut out, and I think that's fairly good. It looks like I could probably stand to do a little bit more work around the arms, so let's go in and pull those in a bit closer to my jacket. It really amazes me to watch people that are proficient at this, and just to see how much time and care they put into making sure that these masks are absolutely perfect. I know that I'll never have a perfect one, but I do like to try to get them fairly clean. Let's zoom that out and see how that looks. Still got some harsh edges here around the right side, so we'll address those. And I still got some there. You can see a little bit of the red from my chair peeking out there, which I'm sure that'll disappear once I add a bit of a background glow. And that looks to be sufficient. Now you can reuse things, like I can pipe this same mask into other things, but what I tend to do here, well, first let me rename this mic mask. I end up making a copy of this instead just because I want to do something totally different with it. So let's say I wanted to make a red glow around myself. I will take a background node, and we'll put this over here on the left viewer, and we'll make it red, some shade of red, whatever that color is, we'll just pick that. And now I can take this mask and pipe it into that background node, and now I have this. This is where it starts to get fun. So I want to disconnect that, and I'll start to put these together. This will be my background. This will be on top of it. So I'll merge these, and if I take a look at this, you can see that little bit of a red edge around me, but now I can adjust this a bit more and increase the border width to start to do that. But I don't want to have too much of that behind me, just a touch of it. And then I'll place a glow node after this background. And now I can play with this to make it more of a neon effect instead of just the solid color. Not sure how much that I actually want. I think what I want to do is go back into that mask and maybe take down the border edge a bit so it's more of a glow and less of a harsh edge. Vsauce Michael. Seriously? If that is the case, that is awesome. Welcome aboard. Vapor Mike. So I've got those, I put all those together so I can merge this back in. I'll get rid of this merge node and we'll merge this one into it instead. And now that's got me sitting over this, but I wanted all that as one so I can take this merge node and move it collectively. And that looks pretty good. I don't know if I want to put a border around this whole thing more so than just... I like that red. Now I can throw some text on top of it, so I'll grab a text node. And let's see if we can find... I don't really know what the Pro Tools logo looks like, so I've got to look it up real quick. But I wonder if I can find a font that matches it. Is there a Pro Tools font? Gosh, honestly, it looks like it's just maybe Arial. So I'll go ahead and pipe that in and just get it placed and figure out where we want to do that. That's bold. Comic Sans. Actually, that the Open Sans light looks dangerously close to what I'm finding online. Let's see, where do I want to put this? That's probably too big. This is something that I struggle with too, is just the aesthetics of where to place things. I think I'd like a drop shadow on that, so I'll add that here instead of adding it as an effect, since I can just add this as Bryant 2. Let me look that up on DaFont. That actually looks pretty good. Well, I mean, we are talking about Pro Tools here. I don't know that I want to buy that Bryant 2 font, though, just for this video. Let's see. I'll rename this node so I can know what it is. So while all this looks complicated, looking at this node tree here as opposed to layers, I mean, it makes sense. It's a flowchart. It says create a background, and then I'll merge OBS on top of that background. This is another merge node where I take all this crap that I made and merge it on top of that. And you can reverse the order of these things. Like if I zoom in here and mouse over this orange, That is for merged background, and that is for foreground. I can also do a mask over that and mask whatever I'm merging into it. It's a lot to it's a lot to take in, but once it clicks, it's very powerful. Let's add another one. Now I just got to move this stuff and figure out where I want to put it, what fonts I want to use. I really wish that it showed the font over here in the list. I mean, it renders it up there where I can see it and everything, but it'd just be nice if I could see it here and not have to change my focus every time. I think I may just go with Arial, or I don't know why that wants to default to bold. And this will probably go through a handful of changes. I think I have an Avid logo somewhere. Yeah, you know, it's awesome that you're able to tune into the live stream while delivering. And as much as I want to complain about work sometimes, I always have to counter it with I'm thankful that I have not been unemployed during the pandemic. I think I may want to go with some kind of a script for this. I've got some kind of a handwriting thing in here. Let's try. But, you know, as I start to work with stuff like that, I feel like I end up getting almost too busy. It's like there's absolutely no reason for me to use 3 different fonts here, especially one like this, which I like, but is not necessarily that legible. Let's see what that looks like. And that harsh edge there I don't like, so we'll probably need to fix that. Back into Fusion. Or I could just not worry about it and stop being a perfectionist. But what are your thoughts on the font styles? I'm not sure that I want to keep that cursive feel on there. Either that or perhaps... Oh, did you guys notice this navigator here is very much like the navigator in Reaper? Maybe I should just change this to that same handwriting. It is just so hard to stick to just a couple of fonts. Now that is very difficult to read. Northeast Oregon. Good morning to you from freezing cold West Tennessee, Southwest Tennessee to be precise. I like Beavis. I don't like that it doesn't have any caps, or sorry, lowercase, but I like how it stands out. I really wish that I had a bit of a ruler here. I guess I could grab a, what do you call it? A rectangle node or a polygon node. I can cheat and make a ruler like this. This is one thing that is kind of silly though, that you can't do simple things like a line. I have to make a background node, make it the color that I want, then pipe a polygon mask into it, draw my polygon, but at least I can make sure that it's actually a line. And now merge this background node in and make my polygon thicker. So now I have a line. And I can use this line to line up. Now, let's see, how do I move this? I guess I need to move the merge node. Sometimes it can be a bit of a bear to figure out what to move, but there now I've got a line that I can use to get my text lined up. 40 degrees. What is the temperature here? I seriously need to get bifocals. It is 10 degrees here, but that's in Celsius, so let me convert that for Americans. That's 50 Fahrenheit here, so it's actually much warmer than it is for those who are working on the FedEx truck at the moment. All right, so I can take this and line that up based on that edge. And I'm not sure if I even want to keep these colors, but this is a good starting point. Look, if you're willing to drive back to Jackson, I'll fix a plate for you. No rain. It's been raining most of the morning here. Fortunately, the dog handled her business quickly, so I didn't get too soaked. Move these guys Move these guys over a bit just to condense this, even though I can stretch it forever. I'm not even sure if this is going to be an interesting topic, but sometimes we make things just for filler. Oh, be sure to hit me up when you guys do come here. It's been a while. We'll have to have a jam session and live stream it. I think I have a Pro Tools logo in here somewhere. I've got this Pro Tools crash screen. 5-year user. Well, thank you. I've been using it probably longer. I should be better. I guess my Reaper ability is about like my guitar. As long as I've been doing it, I should be much better. But it is what it is. What have I done? I don't know what I just clicked. I think I was trying to rename this guy. There we go. So let's put the Reaper logo in here somewhere. Actually, let's move all this stuff down so I can get this merged in beforehand and get it sitting behind some elements. Now that's a bit large at the moment, so we'll need to resize that guy for sure. And move it. One more text node, and I think this will be decent. Go ahead and stick with Beavis since that's what I used in the other ones. And be sure to give that a drop shadow as well. And perhaps make that the same size as I did the other one. Beavis and Butthead. Gosh, I remember that episode where the guy could never get their names right, and he called them Beaver and Butter. Called them some of everything. Let's make that bigger. That's a little busy. Let's back it off a touch. Ah. Whoops. Okay, that's pretty cool. Thank you. You know, I think somebody told me that on the Resolve Discord server just the other day, and I forgot about it because I was hoping that I could just drag in a ruler, kind of like how you do in GIMP. I'll go ahead and get rid of this polygon node since I don't guess I need it. Get rid of that merge node, and now I need to move all of these. I guess I could have grouped these, but let's go back and see how that looks. I probably need to move that Reaper logo and maybe tuck it in that space underneath. That would look pretty good. Yeah, that is... I have customized actually some of my shortcuts here in Resolve to better match my muscle memory in Reaper. Let's see if we can get that sized up just right. Kind of interesting to see more Resolve users in here. I mean, a lot of people shy away from it. I started off using HitFilm Express and outgrew it rather pretty quickly when I wanted to try to do some multicam content when I was like trying to do drum recording videos. Let's see how that looks. Well, if I can get the viewer to get that thing to get out of the way. Transport. I suppose that works. Now it's got me thinking, what color is the logo for Pro Tools? I think it's some kind of a bluish. I could have sworn that I had that Pro Tools logo, but I don't want to glorify it too much. Alright, so with that done, I guess I can go back to this actual timeline and check on the video. I need to go and refill my coffee, so I'm going to switch this over to full screen for a moment and let you guys sneak preview this next video. Be right back.
Hey, it's Mike. Let's talk about Reaper. I've been a Reaper user pretty much since I started working with audio. While I've never used Pro Tools, I've seen plenty of people using it on YouTube. One of the features that I've seen in Pro Tools that was always interesting to me is when a user is working in the Arrange view, or whatever it's called in Pro Tools, where you have the track control panel, a listing of your tracks, and no visible mixer, the user would click on one of the tracks and something like a floating fader that's dedicated to that one track would pop up. Today I'd like to try to recreate that in Reaper. Let's take a look. I've got a project open with 10 blank tracks and the mixer docked at the bottom in what I believe may be the default Reaper layout for the mixer. The mixer can be either docked as it is now or floating, and you can also toggle the mixer visibility. In the Pro Tools example I explained in the introduction, the mixer is floating, but it's also isolated to a single track. That would suggest that we need to undock our mixer and somehow narrow it down to where it only shows the desired track. Before we start to destroy the beautiful setup that we currently have, it's probably a good idea to save a copy of this layout that we can always recall. We'll go to View, and Screen Sets, Layouts. The default key press for this is Control-E. Now I've already saved this, but just for the sake of showing you how this is done, go to the Windows tab, select whichever number you'd like, and save. You can give this whatever name you'd like, and be sure to place a check mark on each item that you'd like saved. In this case, my primary concern is the layouts. And with that saved, I can now alter the layout of my mixer and easily be able to recall that default setting. For example, if I were to right-click my mixer and undock it, I can now press F7 to load my default layout, and we're right back where we started. With that in mind, let's first start to build a single fader mixer with no master track. I'll right-click the mixer and uncheck Dock Mixer in Docker. That gives me my floating mixer, but of course I still have all of my tracks. I also don't want to have the master visible. I can right-click the master track, go up in the menu to master track, and uncheck Show in Mixer. Now we've got just our individual tracks and no master track. The next thing that I want to do is make sure that I have the mixer set to automatically scroll to the selected track. For example, if I have my window narrowed down, I'd like to be able to click on a track, let's say track 9, and you can see that the mixer scrolls over to that. Right-click your mixer, and there's an option to scroll view when tracks activated. Mine's already checkmarked, but of course I just wanted to show you where this setting is. Now I can narrow down my mixer and continue clicking tracks until I get this size just right. That seems about right. I'll test. And as you can see, as I click each of these tracks, my single fader goes right to that track. It still seems like it's just a little bit too wide. It's kind of difficult to get it exactly perfect, but anywhere in the ballpark is sufficient. Next, I think I'd like to make this as small as I can, so I'll resize this a bit further. And that seems about right. Now that we've got that mixer just the way we like it, I can save a new screen set. So I'll go to slot number 3, save that, and I'll call it floating single fader, or whatever you'd like to call it. Spelling is important. Underneath the load key, you can see that I can call each of these 3 scenes by pressing one of the function keys. F7 will load my default layout, F8 will load a floating mixer, and F9 will load the floating single fader that we just created. That's got us close, but I'd like to take it a little bit further. For the next portion, you'll need SWS extensions. If you don't have SWS extensions installed or don't even know what it is, click the link above to learn more. I'd like to change this screen set to where it starts with no mixer at all. To do that, I'll close my mixer and simply save over this again. Now you can easily bring the mixer back by clicking View, Mixer, or whatever key press combination that you have assigned to that. My purpose for wanting to start this with the mixer not visible is so we can create a custom action to make this pop up as we click on a track. So with my screen set saved, I'll go ahead and close this, and now let's start to take a look at cycle actions. Cycle actions allows you to create custom commands in Reaper. The difference between a regular custom action like you might create in the actions list and a cycle action is that cycle actions also allows you to create conditional statements. Once you've got SWS extensions installed, go to Extensions and Cycle Action Editor. Now before we get too far into this, I'd like to give a shout out to John Tidy with Reaper Blog for helping me with some syntax errors as I was testing this earlier. So with our Cycle Action Editor open, I'd like to create a new cycle action. Right-click in the left pane and choose Add Cycle Action. We'll need to give this a name. I'll call this PT Floating Mixer. The left side shows the names of your existing cycle actions, and on the right side you can stack up commands. From our earlier trials, we know that our mixer is set in a way to where if we click a track, it will automatically scroll to it. I think what I would like to happen is to be able to call this action to make the mixer visible. My first command will be to select the track under the mouse cursor. Here we see right-click here to add commands. I can right-click that, and my options are to add step, add statement, or add selected action in the actions window. I'll click away from that for now and click Action List in the lower left corner. This brings up my action list, and I can have these side by side. I'll filter for Select, TCP, and we can see SWS Select TCP Track Under Mouse Cursor. With that highlighted, I can now right-click here to add commands and choose Add Selected Action in Actions window. So my first action in this cycle action will be to select the TCP track under the mouse cursor. We know that there's an action in the actions list to toggle the visibility of the mixer. We can see the action View Toggle Mixer Visible, and we can see the current state is off. Keeping in mind that I saved this particular screen set with the mixer disabled, we need a way to detect the state of the mixer and to turn it on if it's already off. This is where conditional statements comes in. Back in the cycle action editor, I'll right-click and go to Add Statement, F0. This adds 2 different commands. It adds the if the next action is off, and then there's an end of the statement. If I click the end if statement, I can right-click and choose Insert, and that gives me another line to add a command. If I look back at the actions list for my command to toggle the mixer visibility, I can see there's a command ID 40078. Another way to enter commands here is to highlight the left side under command and type in that command ID.
You guys probably heard me coughing and everything.
Now that I've added 40078, that has added the command View Toggle Mixer Visible. So currently our command would select the track control panel track under the mouse cursor, and then it checks to see if the next action is off, and then it does nothing. We'll need to add another action to do if this action is off. I can right-click View Toggle Mixer Visible, copy, and then right-click the end if statement and paste, and that places it before it. So now our command reads, select track control panel track under mouse cursor, and if the mixer visibility is off, toggle it to the on state, and then stop. Now with our cycle action completed, I can close my actions list and apply to save that, and we now have a custom cycle action called PT Floating Mixer. Now we need to find a way to call it. I think I'd like to assign a mouse modifier to call this command, so I'll go to Options, Preferences, and under Mouse Modifiers, let's change our context to Track Control Panel. I like all of my default actions, so I think I will bind it to Alt and double-click. Underneath Behavior, double-click in the area for Alt, and choose Action List. That will bring up our action list, and we can find our new action in here to call. I'll filter for PT Float, and here's our custom command, PT Floating Mixer. I'll select and close, and holding Alt and double-clicking in the track control panel should open up our floating mixer. Let's apply that and test. I'll hold Alt and double-click track 3, and there's our mixer. Now, one thing that I don't like about this is it moves it over to the right. It's not that big of a deal. I can easily move my cursor over there, but it would be nice if we could have the mixer move to where our cursor is. We can go back and edit the PT Floating Mixer cycle action, and let's add another command after the conditional statement. We'll open up the actions list and filter for Move, Active, Float. We can see plenty of SWS actions here to move the active floating window to mouse cursor with various positions. After testing this a few times, I believe the one that I like the most is horizontal right, vertical middle. So with that selected, I can right-click in the cycle action editor and add the selected action in the actions window. I'll apply that, and let's close these to test. Now my mixer is still visible, but I'll need to close that to fully test, and now I'll hold Alt and double-click a track, and my mixer has opened just to the right with the horizontal middle in line with the mouse cursor. Now I can adjust this fader and click on any one with a single left click, and the mixer changes to represent whichever track I've clicked. Now, one thing I've not been able to work out so far is how to get the mixer to move again while running that same action. If I hold Alt and double click on a track with the mixer open, it seems to do nothing but move the focused track in the mixer. So while this is not a perfect setup, it comes pretty close to mimicking the behavior that we saw in Pro Tools. And if I'd like to go back to my default mixer, I can just press F7 on my keyboard, and we're right back where we started. I can easily toggle between them with the function keys, and call my custom cycle action by holding Alt and double-clicking a track. Cycle actions combined with screen sets adds a lot of functionality and customization options to Reaper. I hope this helps. If you like the content you're seeing, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and you can support the channel further by clicking.
I forgot to put my subscribe animation in there. The subscribe animation is one that I built in Fusion, and I saved it for easy recall. If I can find it, now I can't read. It's right there. And the fun part of this is waiting for it to cache, because this is calculated every time, and then finding the right place for it.
If you like the content you're seeing, be sure to
Probably should start right about there, and hopefully that will
like, share, and subscribe, and you can support the channel further by clicking the Buy Me a Share and subscribe, and you can be sure to like, share.
Oh, it's down there. Whoops.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and you can support the channel further by clicking the Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon link below.
Yeah, I think for the most part, the only thing that I do with the mixer is just either floating it or not. That's about it. But since we have a lot of people come into the forums and such asking questions about how to replicate things that they're used to, I guess from other DAWs that they've worked with, it just kind of made me start to think about how to do some of those things. I don't think you were here at the beginning, but one thing that I discovered, well, I just filmed this video yesterday, but I learned after the fact that that fader that pops up in Pro Tools is not even functional. It essentially all it does is, let me open up Reaper again here. This will take a minute because of the plugins I've got on this particular project. I guess I could have done a blank one to make this faster. But what it does in Pro Tools is it just pops up as you move the volume knob and then disappears. And now it's made me wonder how I can do that, and I can't seem to target that volume knob, at least not in mouse modifiers or in action, so I think it'll probably have to be scripted. Now, Eric over on Discord has written a script for me to try for one part of this. Like I was, one of the script that I built, or the cycle action, if I hold Alt and double click, let's say over here on this particular track, that mixer will pop up over here, but if I run the action again, it doesn't. It still changes, but it doesn't follow my cursor. So he's written me a script that will hopefully someone gave you homemade honey. That is awesome. That's probably about the sweetest thing you're going to get on the job today, and that's the worst joke I've told in a while. So I'd like to get this to where I can have it kind of like this, but wherever I click, have it follow. That's the part I haven't quite figured out yet, so there'll have to be some additional script work for that, just for something that's pretty pointless.
If you like the content you're seeing, be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
There we go.
And you can support the channel further by clicking the Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon link below. I like coffee.
I guess that still hasn't finished caching. It looks like it's about done. My video card, it's a bit of an older card. I've got an RTX 2070 Super, I think. And I just bought it last year used for like $700. It replaced a much newer Radeon, I think it was a 5500 XT. I don't do any gaming much or anything. Well, I do play games to some extent. I've got Google Stadia, which is great for casual gaming. But as far as the computer... Oh, welcome aboard, Ivan. Goodness. Gosh, I'm sorry, I lose my train of thought so easily here. I think I was looking at that subscribe animation.
If you like the content you're seeing, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And you can support the channel further by clicking the Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon link below. I like coffee. Also, check the link in the description to join us on Discord. See you next time.
Thank you, Square. Gosh, I can't read. This takes me a minute. Squares Unmusic, or is it UN Music? Thank you for joining. I really had no expectation of anybody joining me on this stream. My wife is working on the Thanksgiving stuff and said the best thing that I can do to help is stay out of the way. So I figured, let me just turn on the camera and see what happens. And it's excellent to have people actually joining me. This is fantastic. I don't remember what I did for an outro on this, so let's find out together.
Join us on Discord. See you next time. I should probably start sipping on this coffee at the beginning of the video. It'll be a lot warmer then.
Yeah, I think that's passable. So I will end up... Oh, I need to trim that music. There's no need for that video to keep going that long. So I'll end up exporting this and prepping it for... Well, scheduling it for release on Monday, even though you guys have already seen it. We've got our... excuse me. Our cover picture, which... Oh, that's one thing. Getting my cover pictures out of Resolve, I need to get my stacked timelines. And I'll open up my thumbnail photo timeline. And what I do at this point is I'll go into the color page. And I'm not actually going to color grade any of this. I'll just right-click this and grab a still. And then I can export this. I'll put that into my subfolder if I can find it as a JPEG. I gotta stop with the coughing and stuff. So if I go into my folder, I've got this ready to be used as a thumbnail for this video. And that corner right there is gonna drive me batty, but I don't know that I'll really care enough to fool with it. So there is our sneak preview at Monday's video. I'll go ahead and save that and come back to this mess later. As far as other stuff, I don't know. I know that a few of you are aware of it, but if you'll take a look at my projects listed here, let me go back up to the top level. Those things, it'll probably drive me batty for a while, but I'll just not worry about it. But you'll notice this project here. I really am. But it drives me. This is one that I had made a slight announcement for. I'm still not able to give a whole heck of a lot of detail on it just because everything is not really finalized yet. I've still got one more video to film for this particular series of videos. I had meant to have this done much earlier in the year, but I ended up getting COVID the week that I had taken off work to film all these videos. And have I'm over COVID now, but I still have this persistent cough that I can't seem to get to go away. So recording long form videos is often difficult for me, but I think maybe I can give you a bit of a sneak preview on this. You'll notice 3 letters at the beginning of this project. I'll let you do your own guessing as to what those 3 letters stand for, but this is a course that I have developed for teaching drum editing in Reaper. I've got my different categories and everything here, or chapters, whatever you want to call it. I'm not gifted with words today. And so far, I've done the introduction and prerequisites, how I would prepare for editing, show how to create a composition from multiple takes, and, excuse me, I've got 3 chapters worth of editing my own performance, and then I've got my friend Edward's performance. When I did my own performance, I did manual slip editing, which is my preferred method for drum editing. But for Edwards, I wanted to do a mostly automated setup that would be similar to what people might be used to in something like Beat Detective in Pro Tools, and I guess there's probably other videos other DAWs that have some kind of tools for helping with drum editing. But do any of you guys and girls work with live drums, or am I kind of alone in that? Let's see if one of these timelines will open up and play smoothly. I don't know how well this will do since I've got the video card busy working with OBS, but it's worth a shot. The worst that'll happen is it'll stutter. Let's see, this video is how long? Hour and 40 minutes? Is that right? I may not be reading that correctly. No, I'm sorry, that's like an hour and maybe 50 seconds. Maybe we can just find a spot and see what I got going on here.
Click my intro.
If it'll play.
You can see that it automatically creates a time selection over the intro. With my snare top selected, I can press Shift S on the keyboard, and that will create a split based on the time selection. Now, since my tracks are grouped, you can see that this has occurred across all of the tracks for the drums. So now that I've got this section, I'd like to turn on repeat and just take a listen and start to audition this and find the best take for the section. Now, most of this intro is fairly ambient,
Don't laugh at my drumming.
so the first part will not necessarily be that much of a difference between them, but there may be some significant differences in this latter half, so let's take a listen.
Really not a whole lot to listen to in that intro. Let's move a little bit further. I want to find this part with a fill that I really liked. And I even marked it awesome fill.
We'll zoom in and hold Alt on the third take and just slide that kick transient to where it starts about on time. Now that's going to push everything else in that section off a little bit because it seems like my timing was off in general in that third take, at least for this part.
Oh, there's
But
the
let's
awesome
see how it
fill. I
sounds.
can see it right there.
I already don't like this take, but let's let it finish.
You can tell my OBS was stuttering a lot in that. I have definitely changed my settings since then. What was like take 2?
Yeah, I think I'd like to go with take 1 for the most part. And right around measure 50, we'll split. So I'll move my cursor here, highlight the track, and press S to split. And then we'll select take number 2 after that, and let's see how that sounds all together. Now I expect a little bit of a glitch here because those two don't necessarily run exactly into each other. And you'll notice right now we've got linear fades on both sides. We'll end up crossfading these a bit later. There's actually an option we can set now to make that happen. If you go to Options and Preferences and do a search for Split, we'll see there's an option here Under the defaults for media items, to overlap and crossfade items when splitting, and you can designate a length. I think I'd like to go ahead and set that so that going forward we'll have automatic crossfades. That'll come in handy a bit later. Now, as you can see, I've got a button in my toolbar to turn that on and off because sometimes I don't want that to happen and I would prefer this behavior. But in the case like this, where we've decided that we want to have a take from another section in this same section, it would be handy to crossfade that. Before I do that, I'd like to turn off my snapping, which you can do by clicking the snap icon in the toolbar or by pressing Alt-S. With that disabled, I can move my cursor until it becomes what looks like the edge of the media item with an arrow pointing left and right. Left click and drag, and I can move this to the right, and of course it places a gap. But if I move it slightly to the left, as it overlaps, it creates a crossfade. Now this crossfade, if we zoom in, we can see what it's doing. And when you're over the crossfade, if you move to the center, you can see the icon changes. Hold Shift, left click and drag, and you can move where that crossfade happens. Now if I zoom back out, if I left click and drag on that crossfade, I can control where that next take comes in. I want to move it to just before that so I have a proper crossfade into that transient. Now we may hear some glitching that we'll need to fix later, but the important part for now is just understanding that you can do that and why you would want to do that. So let's take a listen and see if we get a smooth transition into this next take. And that sounds great. So let's move on to the next section, the chorus. We've got
something like that. Yeah, this video has, I think it's going to end up being somewhere between 8 to 10 hours worth of training on how to edit drums, both using manual slip editing and using a mostly automated fashion. We also cover comping. I think I've already said all this before, but I'm running out of material. So does this what makes punch-ins? Yeah, let me open up a project in Reaper. Let's play with some drums here for a minute. Oh wow, that's an old project. Let's try this one. I think this was after I finished doing the editing and comping. Yeah, this is a finished, the finished project after I did the editing. Let me get OBS up and running here. I'm going to mute my microphone and let you guys hear what this sounded like after editing. I thought the song was pretty cool. You'll notice that there's no effects on anything here, so these are still the raw drums. The only effects is going to be the gate on my toms to help filter out resonance from the kick drum. right, so that is the song completed with editing and everything. And I think it turned out pretty good. I didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot to it. I mean, I'm not a perfect drummer by any stretch of the imagination, but when I do my editing, I like to keep it as organic as possible and just, excuse me, tighten it up a bit to preserve as much of the original performance as possible, but help to make the groove a bit better, if that makes sense. I love this room for recording instruments, but it's difficult with voice. I don't know if you can hear it in my speaking mic, but the ceilings are quite tall in here, and I'm gonna get my what do you call that thing? It used to be called OBS Ninja. Now I can't remember what it was called. I think it's Video Ninja. I'll get that, and then I can walk around with my cell phone camera and show you a bit more. Oh, the snare. Let me show you that real quick. The snare that I used on that is a Pearl. It's a Joey Jordison snare, and excuse me. But I didn't like the Slipknot branding and all that stuff. I just liked the sound of it. So it was, I think it may have been around this time last. No, it was the year before COVID. So 2 years ago, I got this snare. I took it to a shop nearby that does auto finishing or whatever that's called. But he's done a lot of work for movies. Like he did the work for some of the motorcycles in Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man and stuff like that. But I really love Cold War era Soviet memorabilia, stuff like that. And what is my camera focusing on? It's probably catching the microphone instead of me. I'll need to move up a bit. There we go. So I like Cold War era Soviet Union stuff, and I stripped all the paint off the snare drum, and let me let that focus for a second. Stripped all the paint off the snare, misted it with water, and let it rust. And he clear coated it and sealed it so that it's smooth now instead of being like harsh rust. And that KGB badge is something that I pulled off of an old cigarette case. So this Joey Jordison snare no longer has any of his branding and is properly rusted and tagged with a KGB badge. And I've currently got Remo Power Stroke heads on it. Let me see if I can get this OBS Ninja thing up and running here. All right, see if I can get this thing to behave in the right format. I've got to allow my phone to rotate for a second. And flip that around to the other camera. And I don't think we want any audio. Well, I guess I don't know. We'll see what happens. Give me just a second to get this thing showing up online. Trying to do this one-handed, as if I can't put the phone down so I can type. GQRDGN. All right, let me see if I can get this camera to show up here in OBS. And hello. Check. Well, that's awkward. Okay, let's not do that. I was gonna try that, but I was having some serious issues with audio. I think maybe I just need to try that again and perhaps make sure that audio is disabled. I'm kind of curious though. Let me try that again. That was really weird. Yeah, I'll be sure to choose the no audio option this time. Oh, I've got it set to disable video. That probably won't work. I'm sure this is really great when it works. It's strange because I've used it before, but I'm having trouble today. But now it's become personal, so because of my personality, I'm going to have to get this thing to work. Okay, there's my back camera. We'll disable audio. Flip this around and start. All right, let's try this one more time. We're going to get this. Got to change the source. Ah, okay, there we go. So here's my messy desk with all kinds of junk on it. There's you guys. So I won't have sound for a minute because I disabled the audio on this phone. So I will walk around to the kit. Well, I've got my snare here on the floor at the moment next to the Lysol, but here's the drums. Hey Google, turn on ceiling lights. So that's the 25-cent tour. Autofocus. Autofocus. See, this is why I use manual focus all the time. It's focusing on Michael Myers back there. Let me get my lighting back right. Hey Google, turn off ceiling lights. There, now we're focused. All right, well, since we're all still here and whatnot, does anybody have any Reaper questions by chance? Anything that might want to see done or try to do? You really got me thinking about possibly doing a drum stream here in a bit. What monitors? I have got, what are these, Kali or Kali, however it's pronounced, LP8s, which they work for me. You notice I very seldom, if ever, do any actual mixing on my videos. That's because I don't think I'm that good at it, so I just stick to usability tips. With that said, I guess these are good. I mean, I can hear through them. How to export stems. Now, when you're saying stems, are you wanting to export affected tracks or raw tracks with no processing, because there is a difference. I'll go ahead and fire up a session. We'll just pull up that, okay, raw. Let me open up a project. Yeah, Miguel, I've got TP-Link CASA lights in both I've got 2 lamps here on my desk, or on either side of my desk, and then I've got 4 more bulbs up top, and they're all controlled by Google Home. I can do them different brightness levels, different colors, control them individually as a group, or however, like, for example, hey Google, set ceiling lights to magenta. And now we've got a bit of a magenta. I look like I'm doing a T-Mobile commercial now. Hi, it's Mike with T-Mobile. Hey Google, set ceiling lights to white. And that is entirely too bright. Hey Google, turn off ceiling lights. Let's see, exporting the stem. So you want you want them raw. Let me switch my scenes on OBS. Oh gosh, did I have OBS over there the whole time? Was it? Hopefully it wasn't like running over itself. Okay, so here we are in Reaper. And let's say, for example, the artist in this wanted to have a copy of their vocals without any effects. So what I would do is find his vocal tracks here and select each of them. Kazakhstan, that is a long way from here. Good morning, I guess probably afternoon over there. So with his, gosh, he had so many vocal tracks. All this purple is vocals. Of course, some of these are folder tracks, so I'll just be sure to select the ones, only the ones that actually have data in them. And I'm holding control and clicking each of these to select them. So I've got my tracks selected. And if you go to File, Consolidate Export Tracks, you can consolidate. I'd like to do the entire project. Now in my case, I've got these special markers up top. There's this one that says equals start and one that says equals end. If I have those markers, if I choose entire project, it's only going to export what's between those markers. So even if I've got more data over at the end, like for sometimes when I'm recording drums, I may sample my own drums or whoever's I'm recording to get a few clean hits in case we've got some hits that we need to replace, and I'll put those outside of the bounds of the actual project, but still in the same project, if that makes sense. So I want to do entire project, selected tracks only, 24-bit wave, 48K, and there is, in this case, what this is going to do is export these raw tracks with no processing whatsoever, but they'll be consolidated to where they're all the right length. So I'll go through this one and just show you how this works. You can create the names of your consolidated files here by using wildcards. So here I've got $track number, so each track will start with its track number, dash, and then the track name, and then the file extension. If you mouse over each of these, you can see what the different wildcards are, and you can click on them to insert those things into your file name. I'll create me a folder on the desktop, just call it testing, and I can see down here what these are going to look like. So I'll go ahead and process these, and that should go pretty quick because it's not actually processing anything, it's just gluing them together and making individual tracks. So this project is at 150 beats per minute. If I go and open up a new project tab and set my BPM at 150, I'll go and grab those files that I just exported, drag them into Reaper right at the beginning on separate tracks, and these are my consolidated rendered or exported vocal tracks. This is going to sound funny since it ain't mixed, it's just the raw tracks, but here's that guy rapping.
I cut my losses, no regrets. No regrets. My credit guidance to invest. Moving so silent, you think that I let.
Now, hearing that in context back in the mix, let me mute my mic for this one.
I cut my losses, no regrets. I cut my losses, no regret. Up in my credit guidance to invest. Moving so silent, you think that I left. Yeah, got love for my mom, got love for these checks. Got love for my pops, got love for these vets. I cut my losses, no regrets. Thumbing through money, I pay my respect. Moving so silent, you think that I left. Yeah, got love for my mom, got love for these checks. Yeah. Got love for my pops, got love for these vets. Yeah, gas take care of the stress, now I take care of the streets. God take care of the stress, I take care of the beats. Yeah, figure looking good, make it put on repeat. Since age 13, yeah, knew it was a feast, make it feel so good like sex on the beach. There's power inside, I need to release. Can't put no leash on the beast, I'm boss. Got my foot chopped off, battle with depression, I was lost in the sauce. Lessons turn to blessings, wax on, wax off. If you wanna know the cost, just short of a key, try to sell drugs with me. Always kept top shelf to myself low key, kept it strapped in reach, case I hate to try to breach. I'm raw with the heat, I got the receipt. Used to be violent, profiling, now it's about what can I teach? How can I help? Make it hard fail, who can I reach? I cut my losses, no regret. Up in my
Didn't realize I had the mic muted. I'll be right back. Got a phone call. Good times, good times. Sorry for the, there we go. I guess you can probably hear me now. I am going to have to go. That was my daughter calling, and she has apparently burned herself with a bunch of boiling water. So thank you guys for tuning in. I gotta go.